Let me give you a brief introduction of our guest for today's webinar, ma'am, with your permission.
Yeah, sure.
Good morning, one and all. I, Professor Dipali Kaure, welcome you on behalf of Seva Mandal Education Society, Srimati Kamlaben Gambhirchand Shah Law School. We all have gathered here for today's webinar on the theme Transfer of Property, topic Types of Transfer. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome today's key speaker, Advocate Neha Jagtab ma'am, and a very good friend of mine and colleague. I would like to introduce our guest. Ma'am is a competent professional having 16 years of experience in the field of law, involving practicing in both original and appellant sides of High Court, Mumbai, National Company Law Tribunal, Debt Recovery Tribunal, City Civil Court, arbitration matters, small causes court, family courts, consumer forums, etc., and successfully conducted many cases. Ma'am is well conversant with the court proceedings and able to manage independently all the proceedings, and well proficient in drafting and drafting of claims and other related matters in complex and challenging environment, and managing multiple legal assignments under high pressure and tight deadlines. Just not this, ma'am is also associated with multiple chambers and legal firms. Ma'am is also a panel advocate on few of the financial institutions. To name them few are Chembur Nagarik Sahkari Bank and Sri Narayan Guru Cooperative Bank. This was about the legal practice. Ma'am also has a keen interest in teaching field too. She is a visiting faculty in Hindi Vidya Prachar Samiti College of Law, Ghatkopar, and Chembur Karnataka Law School, Law College, which is in Chembur, and has taught complex topics and subjects like transfer of property, Indian Evidence Act, IPR law, CPC, etc. Coming to the madam's contribution in various legal research projects, and has many articles published in renowned legal and property magazines. About ma'am's alma mater, ma'am has completed LLM in IPR from Mumbai University and pursued BLS LLB from MP Law College, Aurangabad. Thank you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and taking out time from your busy schedule for today's webinar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for introducing me. मला छान वाटतंय ऐकून. वाटतंय खरंच काय केलं.
This is all about you, ma'am, and you deserve this. Over to you, ma'am. Over to you.
Okay, so let's begin the topic. It's a vast topic, and I want contribution from everybody. I want answers from you. So to begin with, today's topic is types of transfers. I'll be covering, there are various types. I'll be covering 5 important types of transfers, that is sale, lease, and mortgages, gifts, and exchanges, which are covered under Transfer of Property Act. So anybody, what are the types of property? If anyone can answer. What are the types of property?
Movable and immovable.
Yes. And before that, let us say there are 2 main types, corporeal and incorporeal, that is tangible and intangible. Tangible is something which you see, which has corpus, which has existence, which is perceived by senses. Okay. So corporeal and incorporeal is, for example, IPR, goodwill is there. Goodwill behind the trademark is there. Your rights in IPR, your rights in copyright, your rights in patent, which are protected under various laws. Those are incorporeal properties. Now this act deals with the corporeal property, and that too immovable. Under corporeal, you can divide movable and immovable. So the act mainly deals with the immovable property, a bit of movable as well, that we will discuss later on. So now what is the year of the act? Date of enforcement, anyone? The Act came into force on 1st of July 1882. It is called the Transfer of Property Act 1882, Act 4 of the year 1882. This act deals with the transfer of properties between living beings, that is inter vivos, okay, two living persons. This is one of the oldest laws in the Indian legal system. It is also an extension to the law of contract. Now, why I am saying this is because whenever there is a transfer of property, which means the rights, interest, share, claim in the property is transferred to some other person, it is always through an instrument, always through some deed, some document, some agreement, some contract. And hence, this law can be termed as extension to the law of contract. Also, the relevant provisions of Indian Registration Act run parallel with this law. So, which instrument needs to be registered, which may not be registered. It is okay if you don't register it. You know, those things are dealt with under Indian Registration Act, and so it runs parallel with this law as well. So before actually touching to the types of transfers, I would like to quote a few theories of some scholars with you. Okay, so the first theory which came to my mind was the theory of Roscoe Pound. He pointed out, he was one of the earliest scholars, he pointed out that the earliest form of properties was a group property. We know that there were clans of people. There was a king of or leader of that clan. Thereafter, the family system, when they settled down in various colonies, the family system came into place. So firstly, there was a group property concept initially, and later on, it got divided into families, that is individual family properties. This was the theory of Roscoe Pound. So I am just trying to give you a perspective about how immovable property and how the rights over immovable property, or the concept of rights over the immovable property, came into existence. So this was a theory, group property theory of Roscoe Pound. The second scholar which comes to my mind is Spencer, who propounded the labor theory. So according to him, this is also called as a positive theory. So according to him, labor of the individual is foundation of the property, which means the one who puts labor in making that property or producing that property, who brings that property into existence, he has the right to claim that property. So property is the result of individual labor, and that person should only be entitled to claim rights over the property. And the other side of the coin, or other side of this theory, was no person has a moral right to property which he has not acquired by his personal effort. Now, in our law also, we see the same thing. This is my property. My property means I have control, I have right to enjoy the property, I have right to gain the benefits out of the property, and the others are prevented from interrupting my right over the property. So this very theory also gives a basis of today's law. Now the third theory is psychological theory, which was put in by Bentham. According to this theory, property came into existence on account of desire to acquire or desire to possess the property. This is a psychological theory. So basically, the acquisitive instinct of human mind drives the human beings to acquire the property, possess the property, and that's why they act accordingly and possess the property. So some psychological angle was tried to be given to this theory. One more theory is functional theory, which was propounded by Jenks and Lasky. It is slightly different than the individual approach. It is it is also called a sociological theory of property, wherein they stated that the concept of property should not only be confined to private rights, but it should be considered as a social institution. So slightly socialistic approach was taken in this theory. So these are the various theories which have led to the basis of our Transfer of Property Act. There is individualistic theory, there is socialistic theory, there is a psychological theory. So all those things have caused this act or to come into existence or provide basis for drafting of provisions of this act. Now, what is the object behind the Transfer of Property Act? Anyone? What is the objective behind the Transfer of Property Act? What does the act provide? Anyone? Yes? Please unmute yourself and answer.
I think
Ma'am,
it is to define and amend certain parts of the law relating to the transfer of property.
Yes. So basically, the objective is to regulate the law relating to the transfer, bring in uniformity to the process, not the process, to the concept of various types of transfer. Okay. I will tell you the objects: to define and amend or regulate the law relating to transfer by the act of parties. So by whichever way one living person wishes to transfer the property to another living person, by whichever way, maybe for temporary purpose, maybe permanently, maybe by way of assignment or sale or gift, lease, leave and license, exchange, actionable claim, various types of transfers are there. So to bring in uniformity, to regulate this process of transfer, this act came into existence. Secondly, this act provides a clear, systematic, and uniform provisions for transfer of immovable property between two living beings. Thirdly, it is extension of law of contract. This we have discussed, because whenever one person transfers the property to another person by way of a document, it is always governed by principles of contract. Now, what are the essentials of contract? Anyone? You must have studied contract law previously. What are the essentials of contract? Yes.
Ma'am, there should be at
Person
least
should be sound mind. There should be two parties, and it should be a
Yes.
legal and legal object to the
Legal
contract.
object. And
and consideration should be there.
right. It should be without any influence. Correct? So these are the essentials of
Fraud and
yes, fraud. There shouldn't be an element of fraud, and it shouldn't be for illegal purposes. So these are essentials of contract. And since one person is transferring to another person the immovable property by way of a contract, so all the essentials of contract should be read along with this law. Next characteristic or next feature of the act is it is not an exhaustive law. It does not govern all types of transfers. Now, why I'm making this statement is because there are wills, there is testamentary succession, there is intestate succession, which is governed under personal laws. Say Hindu Succession Act, or Muslims have their own law, then Christians are there. So this act is not exhaustive. It gives you some 6 types of transfers: uh, sale, lease, gift, exchange, all those things. So particularly the act deals with those types of transfers. For testamentary and for succession, there are other laws, personal laws. That's why the act is not exhaustive. Its scope is limited to the types of transfers which are given in the act. These are the features of the act. Now, let us deal with the relevant provisions of the act. Now, today I am dealing with sale. As I told you, 5 types: sale, lease, mortgage, gift, and exchange. Now, the act defines immovable property. Section 3, clause 3 or section 3.3. The act defines immovable property as does not include standing timber, growing crops, or grass. This is the definition which is given under act. It does not include standing timber, growing crops, or grass. What do you mean by this? Why they are not included? Now,
Because
standing timber is, yes.
no, ma'am, you can continue.
Standing timber is standing on the land. Growing crops are also growing on the land, and grass is also on the land. So why immovable? Why they are not included in the definition of immovable property?
Ma'am,
Because it is not permanently fastened to the property, I think.
Yes.
Permanently attached to the property.
Yes, it is. It can be severed from the land. It can be removed from the land. So where do you find the definition of immovable property? Inclusive. This is the exclusive definition. Does not include. So it excludes these 3 things. The definition of immovable property you will find in General Clauses Act, Section 3, Clause 26, General Clauses Act. That definition says immovable property includes land, benefits to arise out of land, things attached to the earth, or permanently fastened to anything attached to the earth. Now I will give you an example. Land is the land. That is definitely an immovable property. Benefits arising out of land. What do you mean by this?
Ma'am, rent.
Wrong.
Rent money. Rent money.
Rent, yes, yes. Benefits arising out of land. Some property is constructed and you are getting rent from it, right? Things attached to the earth. Some machinery is there which is attached or which is embedded in the earth. Or say the building which is constructed on the earth. That is things attached to the earth or embedded or permanently fastened to anything which is attached to the earth. Some house is constructed. You're enjoying benefits from that house. So whatever land, benefits arising out of land and from things fastened to the or attached to the earth. This is the definition given under Section 3, Clause 26 of the General Clauses Act. That has to be read along with 3.3 of the Transfer of Property Act. Now, Section 5 defines transfer of property. What is transfer of property? Now, in the following section, transfer of property is defined as an act by which a living person conveys property in present or in future. First is living person. There should be 2 living persons, which is inter vivos, which means between 2 living persons. So firstly, there should be 2 living persons. One living person conveys property in present or in future. This is the second essential. In present, which means, for example, the flat is ready possession flat. I am purchasing it I'm giving amount and purchasing it. Property is in existence today. The flat is in existence today. So in present. And what about future? For example, agreement to sell. The flat is not in existence. It is still under construction. But I enter into an agreement for sale with the developer, wherein the property today is not in existence, but it will come in existence in future. So that interest is also governed under transfer of property, definition of transfer of property. So firstly, inter vivus, secondly, property which is in present or in future. Thirdly, to one or more living persons, or to himself. Okay, how can a person transfer the property to himself? Any example? Yes. Suppose there's a partnership firm wherein I am a partner and I am giving my property to the firm. So being partner of the firm, I enjoy the property. Okay. So person can transfer the property to himself as well, and one or more living persons. Now we have seen the essentials. It is inter vivus, it is in present or in future, and thirdly, the person can transfer the property to himself also. Now the living person includes company or association or body of individuals. It is not only individual. It may be a company, it may be association or body corporate, body of individuals also are covered. So these are the essentials. Now I want to ask you a question. What about transfer to the unborn child? Can it be transferred? Whether the transfer is valid according to the definition? Because unborn child is yet not a living person. Then how that transfer can be effected? Anyone? Or is it a valid transfer?
Yes, ma'am. I think under section 13, we can transfer the property to the unborn person.
Under section 13, can you read out section 13? You have to do.
I think transfer of benefit of unborn person, and the transfer should be absolute if we are
Yes.
transferring to the unborn person.
Yes. So how that transfer will take place? How it can be effected? Because the unborn person is not there to sign the document.
Through trust,
It will be
ma'am.
effected.
Firstly, you have to transfer it to someone, his guardian or something.
Correct. And then to him. So that interest can be transferred in favor of somebody who may be guardian or parent or some person in good faith. And then it can be, or you can create a trust also. That is another way of transferring. Create a trust, private trust, and transfer it to that person. So that is also one way. So it is a valid transfer, but through somebody until the child is born and then he attains the majority, then he gets the right to enjoy the property or get it actually in his name. Till that time, some guardian can be appointed and trust can be created, right? Now, so that is a valid transfer. Now, section 6, I will not go into much of the details because the time is limited. Only thing I want to tell you about section 6 is it provides the cases or provides the instances wherein those properties cannot be transferred. Section 6 gives you a list, the properties which cannot be transferred. You can read out whenever your syllabus or exams are there. Before that, whenever you are preparing, read out that section. Those properties are not transferable, which are given under section 6. Now let's come to sale. Sale is dealt with in chapter 3, section 54 to 56. What is sale? let us see what is sale and what are the rights and liabilities of the seller and buyer, and what is the difference between sale deed and agreement to sell. So what is sale? Anybody? What are the essentials of sale?
Sale, which we sell the properties or a land.
Transfer of title
So
of ownership.
basically, it's a transfer of ownership for a price, and a price is paid for some
I'll
consideration.
take names and only that person will speak. Okay, Preeti.
So, ma'am, sale basically is a transfer of ownership for, and a price is paid for that transfer of ownership.
Okay. Then Prachi.
Ma'am, same as Preeti. It's a title or transfer of title of ownership.
Okay. And somebody is there below Preeti. I can't see the name. So that
I guess
person.
that's Mobina.
Transfer of properties for some consideration.
Right. Okay. So the essentials of sale are, you can note down or just remember. Firstly, both parties should be competent to contract. We have seen the essentials of contract are applicable here as well. So both parties should be competent to contract. Secondly, most importantly, the property should not be disqualified from transfer under Section 6. We have just seen that Section 6 gives you list of properties which cannot be transferred. So the property should not be disqualified under Section 6. Then subject matter of the property should not be disqualified under Section 6 or any law from the time being. Sometimes there are various laws which expressly prohibit transfer of certain types of properties. So they should not be covered under that property, or subject matter should not be covered under any such provision, should not be covered under any bar by law. Then transfer should be in exchange of price, which means consideration. Now, whether I am asking you a question, is it possible to transfer the property without consideration?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to transfer?
Yes, ma'am, it
Yes,
could be
ma'am.
gratuitous also.
Gratuitous, yes. And anybody else?
As a gift.
As a gift, correct. So gift is without consideration. Otherwise, if you pay the money, that becomes a sale. Now transfer of, it should be sale. Now in case of sale, it is always absolute transfer. Whatever right, interest, share, claim you have in the property, that is absolutely transferred to the buyer. That is called sale. No right is reserved with you. Whatever easementary right is there, somebody's easement is there, everything goes with the land to that buyer. If there are any liabilities on that property, suppose the property is under loan, it is secured against some loan liability, then also along with, it is understanding between the parties, it depends on the agreement. Along with the rights and liabilities, both the things, the property is transferred. Now suppose there is a loan on the property, existing loan. The buyer may say either you pay off the loan and I'll buy the property, or the buyer may say I will take it along with the loan and I will pay off the loan. Okay, so whichever arrangement the parties want to have or parties want to enter into, those are all noted down in the sale deed or conveyance deed. And by that instrument, the sale happens. Now remember, the sale deed needs to be registered. If you see section 17 of Indian Registration Act, that section gives you which properties or which transactions need to be registered. So by way of a sale deed, the property is transferred. The covenants have, if you see the sale deed, when we draft a sale deed, we write all types of covenants. which are duties and liabilities of the seller as well as buyer. So whenever conveyance deed or sale deed is there, all the terms and conditions are noted down in there, and then the document is registered, complete consideration is given, and handing over of possession is also done with. That time the sale is completed. There is a difference between sale deed and agreement to sale. Anyone can tell me the difference between sale deed and agreement to sell? Yes, what is the difference between sale deed and agreement to sell?
Agreement to sell is to for the future future property. It's a sale deed is present for the presently it is done, and if it is done in the future, so it is the agreement to sell.
Okay, partly this is correct. Now, agreement to sell can happen with the present as well as future property, not an issue. The difference is it is just a promise to sell. Okay, agreement for sale is just a promise to sell the property, whereas sale deed is absolute sale. So today I make the agreement for sale, I pay the part amount, say property is of 1 CR, and I pay 1 crore and I pay 50 lakhs. And I say in future, I will, once you hand over the possession, I will pay the rest of the amount. Right now, I am just making the part payment of the flat. So that is the agreement for sale. Now, once I pay the complete money and I get the possession of the property, that time the sale deed is executed. Now, in case of registration, for the registration purposes, even the agreement for sale can be registered. Then you have to pay the stamp duty on 50 lakhs. Then you register the sale deed at the time of possession. That time, the remaining stamp duty of 50 lakhs you can pay. Remember, you have to pay the stamp duty and get the document registered whenever there is a transaction of sale. Okay, so these are the essentials of sale. There is a difference between agreement to sell and sale deed. Now, let us come to rights and liabilities of the buyer and seller. Very, very simple. You all must have gone through this whenever you bought some flat or sold some flat, whatever, whomsoever amongst you have done this. The rights and liabilities are very simple and straight. Firstly, there should be complete disclosure. On the part of seller, there should be complete disclosure that there is a loan on the property, or some part of property is damaged, or we have got it repaired, or some repair is pending. Whether the property is acquired by himself, or is it ancestral property, or he has got it from some will or some other document. Whether it is free from all the encumbrances, whether all the government dues, taxes, property tax, water tax, all those taxes have been paid, whether the maintenance is up to date, whether it is mortgaged with some other bank for loan liability, is there any litigation pending with the property or pending with respect to the land on which the property is standing. All those details and complete disclosures should be given by the seller to the buyer. Okay. Secondly, he needs to provide originals of the title deeds of the property, that is chain of documents. Suppose I am the seller, I have purchased it from the developer 3 years back. So that sale deed has to be provided to the buyer. The original of that sale deed should be handed over to the buyer. Or I have purchased it with from some third party. He had purchased it from developer. Then both the sale deeds, originals, should be handed over to the buyer. So all the documents should be produced to the buyer. Let him examine those documents. And if the deal is cracked, then all the originals need to be handed over to the buyer. He should satisfy all the queries which the buyer has. He should execute the conveyance, which means the deed, sale deed or agreement for sale, whatever. Both things should be executed by the seller in favor of buyer. Then he should pay all the government taxes, which I had just told. He should maintain the property in good condition. Suppose today I have entered into agreement for sale, and then I am like, now it is his headache. The sale deed, there is a time for sale deed. Say after 2 years, the sale deed is going to happen. Today I just took the part payment and I am happy. I am not looking after the property. No, it is my duty to maintain the property in good condition and hand over peaceful possession to the buyer. That is a duty of the seller under the law. Remember, these are all the duties given under the Transfer of Property Act. Then, most importantly, he should be entitled to sell the property. Suppose it is my self-acquired property, I am entitled to sell it. Suppose it is an ancestral property in which I am staying, but my brother and sister also have one third right in the property. So am I entitled to sell the complete house? No. I am entitled to transfer only 1/3 of my share in this undivided share in this property. Okay, so remember that the person should be entitled to sell the property. These are the duties of the seller. Now, buyer's duties are opposite to this. Or buyer's rights are opposite to this. He has got all the rights to inspect the documents, to check the title of the seller, then to get the possession at the time of sale deed, to get the document registered at the time of sale deed. His duty is to pay off the consideration to the seller as per the agreed terms. Say today 10 lakhs, in 2 years another 10 lakhs, in 2 years another 50 lakhs. Likewise, whichever terms are there in the document. So all these are rights and liabilities of the buyer and seller. These are given in the Act. Okay, are we clear up to the sale? Am I going too fast, or are we clear up to the sale? Are you understanding what I'm trying to tell?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is about the sale. Very simple.
Excuse me, ma'am. I have a query.
Yeah.
Can we transfer the lease property?
Lease.
Yeah.
Yes, leasehold property can also be transferred. We will come to that. But just to answer your query, suppose my property is there. I have leased it to some other person. So when the lease is in continuance, that time also I can create third party right over the property. But there are some compliances which need to be done for that. You need to disclose this also to the buyer. And if he is ready to purchase, then you can transfer the property. Then NOC from the society is required. Then again, you need to intimate the lessee about the transfer or get some NOC from him so that it is a smooth transfer. Baki, when you are owner, you can always transfer your property. No one can stop you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Then let us come to mortgages. What is mortgage? Anyone? What is mortgage? Yes, it is very common type of transaction. What is mortgage? Whatever comes to your mind, tell me. What is the first thing comes to your mind when I say mortgage?
Only a
Keeping the
transfer of
title
possession,
in
not
bonds.
the.
Yes, turn by turn. Mubina.
It's a transfer of only possession, not the ownership. For consideration.
Okay. And somebody, namely advocate, is there.
Keeping the title in bank, a property title.
Okay, all right. Yes, partially you both are correct. Now there are 6 types of mortgages. Has this topic been covered already? The transfer of property is done?
Ma'am, we have started mortgage. We have started now. We have
Okay.
reached section 63 as of today's class.
I follow. Yeah. So I will just tell you, means you are learning this act now. Good. Okay. So there are 6 types of mortgages. Simple mortgage by conditional sale, usufructuary mortgage, English mortgage, equitable mortgage, and anomalous mortgage. Now, these are different permutation combinations. Okay. In some mortgages, you need to hand over possession. In some mortgages, you do not hand over the possession. In some types, the property is secured with the lender. In case of some mortgages, there is a condition for sale for non-payment. The remedies are different for the different types of mortgages. The rights which are created are different. Okay, so it is basically permutation combinations in this various types. Now, whichever type the party wants to avail. Why this is made? Because
Ma'am, mortgage is the loan also, no? Home loan.
yes, yes, we are coming to that. Yes. So various types of mortgages are made because the parties can choose which type of arrangement they want to enter into, whether they want the possession of the property or whether they want just title deeds of the property, keep the possession with you, or whether they want to take the benefits arising out of the property. So depending on the arrangement which the parties want to have, they can select the type of the mortgage. Now let's study them one by one. Remember that this is a transfer for limited purpose. Sale is absolute transfer. Mortgage is a limited transfer. It is not absolute transfer. The mortgagor, which is the person who holds the property, who is owner of the property, and giving it as a mortgage, giving it as a security to somebody else, he always is the owner of the property unless otherwise provided or unless otherwise action is taken. Okay, so this is a limited purpose transfer. This is not the absolute transfer. So now let us see the mortgages, types of mortgages. Now again, remember that this is a contract and all the essentials of contract are applicable here as well. So first is the simple mortgage. Simple mortgage means possession is not handed over by the mortgagor. Mortgagor is the one who owns the property, whose property it is, and he transfers the property to somebody else by way of mortgage. That somebody else is the mortgagee. It may be a bank, it may be some NBFC. NBFC is non-banking financial institution. Like DHFL was there, ILS was there. Island FS, sorry, not ILS. Island FS was there. So the mortgagee is the one who is the owner of the property or who is entitled to mortgage the property. He may or may not be the owner. He may be just having the power to mortgage by way of some instrument. The actual owner has given him power to mortgage the property. That is also possible. So rather than owner, I will use the word entitled to mortgage the property. So I am the person who is entitled to mortgage the property, and the person, so I am a mortgagor, and to whom I am mortgaging, that person is or that institution or bank is the mortgagee. So in case of simple mortgage, possession is not to be handed over, possession stays with me. Mortgagor binds himself to pay the money. Now what I do is, I create a mortgage of some bank over the property. For that, I get some money from the bank as a loan. Okay. Now I bind myself. Are you all with me? Are you getting this? In this case,
Yes, ma'am.
I am the mortgagor. Property is mine. I have mortgaged it with the bank, against which the bank has given me loan. Okay. Now, in the mortgage deed, when I draft a mortgage deed, I say that I bind myself to repay the money. Naturally, it is a loan. I bind myself to repay the money. And if I don't pay the money, then it will be sold to the bank. Sale occurs with the intervention of the court. Okay. What happens if I don't pay the money? The bank will file a suit before the DRT, Debt Recovery Tribunal, before the DRT, and seek relief in the nature of sale of the property, saying that he has not repaid the loan, or she has not repaid the loan. So kindly allow us to sell the property. DRT allows the sale, bank auction takes place, and bank recovers the money out of that auction. Whatever is the balance loan amount, the bank will keep with itself, and remaining money the bank will give to me. Okay. Suppose there is a 50 lakhs loan which I have failed to repay. Suppose it was 60 lakhs, I paid the 10 lakhs and remaining is 50 lakhs. So bank will get an order from court for sale, sell it for say 55 lakhs, keep 50 lakhs with itself and give me remaining 5 lakhs. So whatever is the amount to satisfy the balance loan is required, that will be kept with the bank. Remaining amount will be paid to me. This is for satisfying the loan. This happens with the simple mortgage. Okay, possession is not handed over in this case. Are we clear about simple mortgage?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Next is mortgage by way of conditional sale. In this case, again, possession is not handed over. The mortgagor, that is me, binds himself to pay the money. If the money is not paid, again same relief is there. In that case, only difference is the condition is put in the mortgage deed that if money is not repaid, the property will be deemed as sold to us. Okay, this is called as conditional mortgage by way of conditional sale. That is the difference between simple and conditional. There is a case law with respect to this. If you want to note down, Sunil Sarkar versus Aghor Basu. Sunil Sarkar versus Aghor Basu. It is AIR 1989, Guwahati High Court case, wherein it has been held that in a mortgage by conditional sale, it is absolutely necessary. In mortgage by conditional sale, it is absolutely necessary that condition affecting the sale should be embodied in the sale deed itself. So whenever the sale deed occurs, or whenever you draft a sale deed with respect to conditional mortgage, you have to embed this condition that on account of non-payment, the property will be deemed as sold to the mortgagee. This condition has to be there in the document. This is what has been held in this case. Okay. Now let's come to usufructuary mortgage. So conditional sale is...
Ma'am, can I just ask a doubt, please?
Yeah, sure.
So, ma'am, here in conditional sale mortgage, so, ma'am, in that court will not intervene, is it?
Court might intervene because the sale, because the bank may approach the court for getting a decree or relief of sale. Okay, it totally depends. Sometimes, the document, see, devil is in the detail. It is about how you draft the document. If clearly you say that it is mortgage by way of conditional sale, then the court intervention is not required. Now, if you make it a vague and ambiguous, then that time it is difficult to make out whether it is simple mortgage or conditional sale mortgage. In that case, court might intervene. Otherwise, court's intervention here is not required. Okay?
Sure, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, usufructuary mortgage. Here, the delivery of possession is done. Okay? Or it is the mortgagor expressly or impliedly binds himself to deliver the possession to the mortgagee in case of usufructuary mortgage. Now, in earlier two cases, delivery of possession was not mandatory. It was not required. In case of usufructuary, delivery of possession is there. Or the mortgagor expressly binds himself to deliver the possession, or impliedly by his action binds himself to deliver the possession to the mortgagee. He authorizes the mortgagee to retain the possession until the repayment is done. Okay, so here possession is handed over and mortgagee can retain the possession of the property until the repayment. Next essential is the mortgagor authorizes. Now the arrangement is like this, that the property is retained by mortgagee and whatever are the benefits arising out of that property, those benefits will satisfy the loan liability, against the loan liability. So suppose a building, okay, where there are tenants who are paying rent, that is given to the mortgagee as a security against the loan liability. Now the mortgagor says whatever rent is coming from that property, is received from that property, that you can retain and use it to satisfy the loan liability. Now loan has two components. One is principal component, one is interest component. Okay. So whatever is the arrangement, now parties can decide, the mortgagor and mortgagee can decide whether that amount, that benefit, is to be used against the interest or against the principal or against both or against part interest and part principal. Against what amount that rent amount can be or benefit can be used, that is as per the agreement between the parties. But the concept is very beautiful, that you retain the property and give me loan against that, and whatever benefits are arising out of the property, those you can use to satisfy the loan liability. Okay. Now once the full repayment is done, okay, suppose the property is kept for 5 years. After 5 years, all the benefits are exhausted by the and used by the mortgagee towards the loan liability. Now the loan liability is over. Okay, so once loan is over, loan liability is over, the mortgagor claims redemption of the property. What is redemption? Anyone? This is a very basic right of the mortgagor. What is redemption? मॅडम आपलं लेक्चर थोडं अजून पुढे जाईल असं वाटतंय, चालेल का?
Ma'am, it's okay, no problem.
Okay, okay. So what is redemption? Yes, anyone?
To get back the property after the payment of the money.
Right? By paying the amount, yes. So mortgagor, it is very inherent right of the mortgagor to claim redemption. Now redemption is always attached right to the mortgagor. Only by operation of law or only by the act of the parties, redemption can be exempted. This right, exercise of this right can be exempted. Otherwise, this right always lies with the mortgagor. Okay. Now, once the full payment in this usufructuary mortgage we were discussing, once the full repayment is done, the mortgagor can claim the property back by way of redemption. He exercises his right to redeem. Okay. Now, this type of mortgage is a must registered mortgage. This must be a registered mortgage. Okay. I told you Section 17 of Indian Registration Act. If you refer to that, you will find that this type of mortgage is a registrable mortgage. No time limit. Here, the time limit is not fixed for repayment. In earlier mortgages or say in equitable mortgage, there is always a time limit given that within 5 years you should repay the loan, or within 10 years you should repay the loan. Here, no time limit is fixed for repayment. You get the interest or benefits from the property and satisfy the loan liability. Until it is satisfied, the property remains with you. Very convenient arrangement between the mortgagor and mortgagee. Okay. So here another difference is no time limit is fixed. Now about accession. What is accession? Anyone? Accession. It is okay. Accession is some addition which is made to the property. I'll give you example. There are two types of accessions. One is natural and another is artificial or man-made. Now, example of natural is alluvial land. Okay, it is land under the water. Whenever the water level goes down or the water recedes, that time that alluvial land is available. Additional land is available. That is accession to the property. This is a natural accession. And artificial is, suppose there is a open plot which is mortgaged, and on that open plot a building is erected. So that is some additional value which is given to the open plot or property which is mortgaged. That is artificial accession. Okay. Now, whatever accession rights are there, they lie with the mortgagee, whomsoever is the mortgagee, to whom the property is given. The accession rights can be enjoyed by the mortgagee. But there can be a case that parties have agreed in the contract that accession rights will lie with the mortgagor. It all depends on the terms of contract or terms of the mortgage. Suppose I am a mortgagor and I know that in the month of May, there will be some additional part of land, alluvial part of the land, which will be there on the property, and that will be used by the mortgagee for his own benefit. So I will put a condition in the mortgage saying that if there is any accession to the land, I will get the benefits of that accession. So it all depends on how the contract of mortgage or mortgage deed is drafted. So whenever you are drafting, you should be very careful while drafting any such document. Next type. So are we clear with the usufructuary arrangement?
Yes, ma'am.
Now let's go to English mortgage. Again, in this case also possession is handed over, and the difference is the date of repayment is fixed. Okay, whenever the mortgage is created, English mortgage, the date of repayment is fixed. The mortgagor binds himself or herself to repay on or before that day. Okay. Now, if I don't repay, what will happen? Anyone? On a given date, I don't repay, what will happen?
Maybe mortgagee have the possession for that property.
Yes, and he has a right to foreclose the loan. What is foreclosure? See, redemption and foreclosure both are coextensive rights. Redemption is the right of mortgagor, that is me, who is giving the property, and foreclosure is the right to whom the property is given. Okay, he can exercise, the mortgagee can exercise the foreclosure. These are coextensive. The condition is whenever the loan becomes due. Okay, like in English mortgage, there is a particular date. On that day, the loan has become due, and I fail to repay the loan. Then the bank can exercise foreclosure right, which means the bank can, whatever the terms, and the bank can enforce the mortgage deed. Whatever are the terms in the mortgage deed, those can be enforced by the bank. Suppose it is said that the property will be sold to the bank. If I don't repay the loan and on or before this particular date, then the bank can foreclose the loan. It can go to the court and get a decree of foreclosure. Okay, so these are coextensive rights. One is of redemption, which is available to mortgagor. The another is of foreclosure, which is available to the mortgagee. Now, next is, here also sale happens without intervention of the court. In English mortgage, sale happens without intervention of the court. It is implied, it is in the contract itself. Now, most common type of mortgage is equitable mortgage, which is mortgage by way of depositing title deeds. Somebody was saying that we give flat as a security to the bank. So it is that type of a mortgage. Here the possession is not handed over. The title deeds are handed over. As I told you earlier, there is a chain of documents of title, wherein my title can be traced from whom I have purchased, from whom that person has purchased, whether that earlier person, original person, had was the owner of the land or was the owner of the flat. Okay, so that all those chain documents are handed over to the bank. Those documents act as security. Okay, they are a symbol, because if I hand over my original deeds to the bank, naturally it is symbolically I'm handing over over my ownership rights to the bank. Okay, so in this case, the difference is possession is not handed over, but all the original title deeds are handed over to the lender. Registration is not mandatory. In equitable mortgage, registration is not mandatory. Noting is done, or recording of such charge by way of mortgage, equitable mortgage, is registered with the registrar. Now, last is anomalous mortgage. The mortgage which does not fit in any of the above cases is anomalous mortgage. Okay, so whatever permutation combinations which we have seen in prior types of mortgages, if your case doesn't fit in any of these, then that amounts to anomalous mortgage. It may be combination of various terms. Okay, here the possession may or may not be delivered. It may be a combination of simple and usufructuary or conditional, whatever. So whatever doesn't fit in any other case, that is anomalous mortgage. But remember, whenever you are creating or transferring any right in the property to any person, make sure that you prepare a proper document for that. Check whether that document is registrable. Check whether stamp duty is to be paid on the document, and do the needful. Okay, so this is about the mortgages. Okay, now there is one case law which I would want to quote. The case law is Maung Tung versus Maung Ang. Maung Tung versus Maung Ang. I don't have the citation now. I will check it and forward it to you later on. This case deals with effects of non-registration of the mortgage. Okay, if the transaction intended to be a mortgage and requiring registration is not registered, then what happens? Then the mortgage is not converted, the mortgage is not converted as a charge under section 100, but may be used to establish a personal liability. So basically, mortgage is not validly created if it is mandatorily registrable mortgage under the law and you don't register it, then it will not be held as a valid mortgage. However, only your liability, since there are your signatures on the document, your liability to repay the loan can be established, but it will not be termed as a registered mortgage under section 100. Okay, this is held in this case law. So are we clear with the mortgages now? Should we go on ahead with the lease? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Should we go ahead with the lease?
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Yeah. Okay. So lease is, everyone knows what is lease. It is under section 105 to 107. It is again not an absolute transfer. Sale and gift, these two types of transfers are the absolute transfers. Otherwise, the others are for limited purpose. Now, essentials of lease are, they are not, the transfer is not absolute. Certain time period is there in the lease deed. It may be express or it may be implied. Or lease may be in perpetuity as well. For example, you must have heard about the cases wherein lease for 999 years was granted, which is as good as perpetuity. So whether that type of lease is valid or not, there was a lot of controversy in that. However, the courts have held that it is a valid lease. Now again, there is transfer, which means again the consideration part comes in, wherein here it is for say monthly rent or yearly annual rent or whichever way the parties agree to each other, that type of lease fees or lease rent is paid to the lessor. Lessor is the one who gives the property on lease. Okay, now the subject matter of lease is always a immovable property. Both the parties should be competent to transfer. Rights to enjoy the property is transferred. Okay, lease is a wider right. License, leave and license is a less wider right, wherein lease is actually the person, the lessee, enjoys the property like owner. Okay, he doesn't become the owner, but like the owner, he enjoys the property since it is given for lease. Now, there are some rights and liabilities of lessors and lessees. It is similar to the sale. Now, only thing is, the lessee should not erect any permanent structure on the property without the express consent of the lessor. That is one condition, and he should maintain the property as it was given to him. So while when the lease ends and he has to hand over the property to the lessor, it should be handed over as it is. Now, normal wear and tear is understood, but no harm, no damage due to the negligence of lessee should be caused. Okay, so this is a duty of the lessee. Also, he should inform the lessor if there is any encroachment by third party. He should use the property for the purpose which was intended in the lease deed and not otherwise. Suppose for residential purpose he has taken the lease and he is using it for commercial purpose, then it is not allowed. Okay. Now, let us come to exchange. What is exchange? Anyone? It is type of barter system. We used to have the barter system earlier. You give me 1 kilo of rice, I'll give you 1 kilo of sugar, something like that. Okay, so this is exchange. Now exchange also same thing. Two persons who are competent to contract, they mutually transfer two immovable properties to each other. Now remember, in exchange, money transfer is not allowed. Otherwise, it will become sale. Suppose I say I'll pay you 50 lakhs. In exchange, you give me the flat. That amounts to sale. It cannot be termed as an exchange. But if I say I will give you a flat worth 50 lakhs, you give me the flat worth 55 lakhs. There is a difference of 5 lakhs, which can be paid off by way of money. Then yes, that can amount to exchange. Out and out money transaction doesn't amount to exchange, it amounts to sale, wherein just to compensate the monetary value, if a bit of money is used for exchange, then that can be covered under the provisions of Exchange under Transfer of Property Act. Remember, it is one thing or one property in exchange of another property, wherein neither of the things nor both the things are money. That is the concept of exchange. This is transfer, and hence this document needs to be registered. Remember that exchange is transfer of ownership. If it is transfer of ownership, yes, it needs to be registered. So this is the concept of exchange. And lastly, let us come to the concept of gift. Now gift, we all, yes?
Then exchange amounts to sale only, na?
Sorry?
The exchange concept is the sale only, na?
Yes, it is sale. Now sometimes exchange may be for other purposes also. Say leasehold properties are exchanged for leasehold purposes. That is also possible, right? So if it is for sale, yes, definitely it is registrable. Now let's come to gift. Section 122. Simple. Gift is transfer. It is absolute transfer of movable or immovable property. The property should be certain property. Remember, this certain word is very important. You just can't say flat number so and so in building so and so is transferred to you by way of gift. No. When you draft a document, when you draft a gift deed or any document, always remember, proper complete description of property should be given. If you see a sale deed, there is always a schedule below the document. Before you sign, before the parties sign the document, there is a schedule above the signatures wherein complete detailed description of the property is given. Suppose it is a flat number, area, floor, building name, society name, the postal address, tehsil, that is taluka, district, the municipal limits of the property, and all four boundaries of the property are given. Okay, so if you see any good sale deed, there is always a schedule of property which is given in that document. Okay, so it should be a certain property. So remember to describe it in detail. Gift is always made voluntarily with free will of the person. No influence, no undue influence, nothing. And no fraud factor. Okay. So it is always made voluntarily with free will. The most important thing is there is no consideration. It is a transfer. It is an absolute transfer, but there is no consideration. The person who gives the gift is donor. The person who receives the gift is donee. Registration of gift deed is a must. Section 17 of Indian Registration Act specifically says registration of gift deed is a must. The another important factor is donee should accept the gift. If he does not wish to accept the gift cannot be registered. I mean, the gift is not complete. It is not a valid gift if donee does not accept it, which means he also has to sign the gift deed. It is not a unilateral transaction. The donor gives and donee accepts. Expressly, it has to be mentioned in the deed. Then again, 2 witnesses are necessary. And what else? Yeah, it is registration is a must, that I covered. Okay. So here I have tried to cover. We have exceeded a bit of timeline, and ma'am had pointed out that the topic is very wide. It is not possible to cover in 1 hour, but I have tried to at least explain the concepts to you. If there are any difficulties, please feel free to ask now or in future at any point of time. Ma'am has my number also. So I guess I will wrap up my session here, and I thank the organizers from the bottom of my heart to giving me this opportunity to speak with such wonderful students. So that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to one and all present here. I, Assistant Professor Shobha Shevale, on behalf of Seva Mandal Education Societies, Srimati Kamlaben Gambhirchand Shah Law School, here to present vote of thanks to our today's key speaker, Advocate Neha Jagtap Madam. Thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening us. We are fortunate to have a renowned personality identity from the field of debt recovery, family matters, civil matters, etc. Thank you so much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and taking time out of your too much busy schedule.
Thank you.
Yes, I would like to extend my thanks to our management for organizing such webinar. Our in-charge principal, Mrs. Rakhi Gadve Madam, for her enthusiastic support. Vice Principal Rajesh Kardak Sir, all teaching and non-teaching staff, and all students for their participation. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Most welcome, ma'am. My pleasure.
Thank you, ma'am. I conclude today's webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.